The summer of 1875 brought a scorching heat unlike any other to the dusty town of Prosperity, Wyoming territory, the kind that made even the most seasoned ranch hands seek shelter by midday. Mabel Evans wiped perspiration from her brow as she hurried down the main street, balancing a pail of fresh milk that sloshed dangerously with each step. The 22-year-old had promised her ailing father the delivery would be made before noon, and the sun was already high overhead. Mabel's auburn hair, hastily pinned beneath her bonnet, was coming loose in the heat. Her worn cotton dress clung to her frame as she quickened her pace past the general store. The milk was for Mrs. Wilson, the banker's wife, who insisted on having the freshest cream for her afternoon tea, a luxury few could afford in these parts. "Watch yourself, miss," called a voice from behind her, but the warning came too late. Mabel collided with something solid, a man's broad chest, and stumbled backward. The milk pail tipped, sending a cascade of white liquid splashing across a pair of finely crafted leather boots. "Oh," she gasped, mortified as she regained her balance. "I am so terribly sorry, sir." Mabel looked up to find herself staring into the most piercing blue eyes she had ever seen. They belonged to a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and a strong jawline softened by the hint of a smile. His Stetson cast a shadow over his features, but she could still see the amusement playing on his lips. Instead of the anger she expected, the stranger threw his head back and laughed, a rich, warm sound that seemed to dance on the air. "Well now," he said, glancing down at his milk-soaked boots. "That's quite an introduction. That's how you'll win me. I reckon baptizing my best boots with the freshest milk in town." Heat flooded Mabel's cheeks as she fumbled for her handkerchief. "Please, let me clean them. I wasn't looking where I was going." "Wade Irwin," he said, tipping his hat. "Just rode into town yesterday. And you are?" "Mabel Evans," she replied, still mortified. "My father owns the small dairy farm east of town." Wade reached down to take the now half-empty pail from her trembling hands. "Well, Miss Evans, seems to me you're short on milk for wherever you were headed. Why don't I help you replace it?" "That's kind, but unnecessary. I couldn't possibly, I insist," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Can't have you getting in trouble on my account." As they walked toward the livery where Wade had tied his horse, Mabel stole glances at the stranger. His confident stride and the way other men nodded respectfully as they passed suggested he was someone of importance. The holstered Colt revolver at his hip wasn't unusual for these parts, but the quality of his clothing despite the milk-stained boots spoke of means beyond the average cowhand. "What brings you to Prosperity, Mr. Irwin?" Mabel asked, finding her voice again. "We don't get many visitors this time of year." Wade slowed his pace to match hers. "Business, mainly. Looking to buy some land, maybe start a ranch of my own." He glanced down at her with those mesmerizing eyes. "Though finding a pretty girl to spill milk on my boots wasn't part of the plan. I'd call that a fortunate accident." Mabel fought another blush. "You're teasing me now." "Perhaps," he admitted with a grin. "But it's not every day a beautiful woman leaves such a memorable impression." They reached the general store where Wade purchased a fresh pail of milk. As he handed it to her, their fingers brushed, sending an unexpected shiver up Mabel's arm. "Thank you," she said softly. "I should really deliver this to Mrs. Wilson before she sends a search party." "Mrs. Wilson?" "The banker's wife," Wade asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm meant to meet with her husband this afternoon about some property." "Well then," Mabel said with a small smile, "perhaps our paths will cross again, Mr. Irwin." "I'm counting on it, Miss Evans." His eyes twinkled. "Though next time, maybe we could meet without sacrificing my footwear." As Mabel hurried away, she couldn't help but look back over her shoulder. Wade Irwin was still watching her, a bemused expression on his handsome face. Something told her that their encounter was more than just a chance meeting. It felt like the beginning of something significant. The next morning, Mabel rose before dawn as usual. The dairy cows wouldn't wait, and her father's worsening cough meant more of the daily chores fell to her. She moved through the barn with practiced efficiency, her mind wandering to the stranger with the kind laugh and milk-soaked boots. "You're distracted today," observed her father, Thomas Evans, as he shuffled into the barn. At 55, years of hard work had left him with a stooped posture and hands gnarled by arthritis, but his eyes remained sharp as ever. "You should be resting, Pa," Mabel chided gently, guiding him to a stool. "Can't let my daughter do everything," he insisted between coughs. "The Evans dairy has a reputation to maintain." Mabel smiled sadly. Their small operation had once been the pride of the county, but since her mother's death 3 years ago and her father's health declining, they'd struggled to keep up. The bigger ranches were squeezing out small farmers like them, and offers to buy their land came with increasing frequency. "I met someone yesterday," she said, changing the subject. "A man named Wade Irwin. Said he's looking to buy land around here." Her father's expression darkened. "Irwin? I've heard that name. One of those wealthy cattle barons from Colorado, if I'm not mistaken." Mabel's hands stilled on the cow she was milking. "He seemed kind, Pa. He helped me after I accidentally spilled milk all over his boots." Thomas Evans snorted. "Don't be fooled by charm, Mabel. Men like that come here to gobble up small farms like ours. They don't care about the people who've worked this land for generations." Before Mabel could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Through the open barn door, she saw a familiar figure on horseback. Wade Irwin dismounted with the grace of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. He removed his hat as he approached the barn, revealing thick dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Good morning," he called. "Hope I'm not intruding." Mabel stood quickly, suddenly conscious of her work dress and loose hair. "Mr. Irwin, what brings you out this way?" "Wade, please," he insisted with a smile that reached his eyes. "I was hoping to speak with Mr. Evans." He extended his hand to her father. "Sir, it's an honor to meet you. I've heard about your dairy's reputation for quality." Thomas rose slowly, eyeing the younger man with suspicion. "Have you now? And what exactly is your interest in our humble operation, Mr. Irwin?" Wade's expression turned serious. "Straight to business, then. I respect that." He gestured toward the farmhouse. "Perhaps we could discuss it over coffee? I have a proposition that might interest you both." Mabel exchanged a glance with her father, who gave a curt nod. "I'll put on a pot," she said, hurrying ahead to tidy the kitchen while the men followed at a slower pace. As she moved around the modest kitchen, she could hear the rumble of male voices on the porch. Her father's tone was guarded, Wade's patient and respectful. By the time they entered, she had coffee brewing and had managed to smooth her hair into a more presentable arrangement. "Your daughter tells me you've been having some trouble keeping up with the larger operations in the area," Wade said as he accepted a steaming cup from Mabel. Thomas's jaw tightened. "We manage just fine." Wade nodded thoughtfully. "I'm sure you do. But I've seen it happen all over good, hardworking folks pushed out by corporations that don't care about anything but profit." "And you're different?" Thomas challenged. "I'd like to think so." Wade set his cup down. "I'm not here to buy you out, Mr. Evans. I'm looking for partners." Mabel couldn't hide her surprise. "Partners?" Wade's eyes met hers, and that same warmth she'd felt yesterday returned. "Yes, I've been investing in small dairy operations across 3 territories. Instead of competing with the big cattle ranches, I'm helping family farms band together, sharing resources, equipment, access to markets." Thomas frowned. "Sounds like you'd still be in charge." "As a financial backer, yes," Wade admitted. "But each farm maintains its independence. You'd keep your land, your name on your products. I'd simply provide the means to compete on a larger scale." Mabel watched her father's face, seeing the familiar battle between pride and practicality. "We don't need charity," Thomas said gruffly. "It's not charity I'm offering, but opportunity." Wade leaned forward. "Your daughter clearly works hard, Mr. Evans. Wouldn't it be nice to know she has a future here, rather than being forced to sell?" When he hesitated, "When things get more difficult?" A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Mabel knew Wade was referring to what would happen when her father passed, a reality she tried not to think about. "I'd like to see your other operations," Thomas said finally. "Meet these partners of yours. I won't commit to anything sight unseen." Wade nodded, seemingly pleased. "Of course. I'll arrange a visit to the closest one, just over in Sweetwater. You can speak directly with the families involved." As Wade rose to leave, he turned to Mabel. "Miss Evans, would you be interested in joining us for that visit? I value your opinion as much as your father's." Before her father could answer, Mabel spoke up. "I would, thank you." Wade's smile deepened. "Excellent. I'll send word when the arrangements are made." He donned his hat and nodded to them both. "Thank you for the coffee. Best I've had since coming to Wyoming." Mabel walked him to the door. You weren't entirely honest yesterday, she said quietly. You didn't mention you were looking at our farm. Wade paused on the porch. I didn't know it was your farm until after we parted ways. When Mrs. Wilson mentioned where she got her milk, I made the connection. His expression grew sincere. I meant what I said in there, Mabel. I'm not here to take advantage of you or your father. Mabel studied his face, trying to discern any deception. My father built this place from nothing. It's all we have. I understand. Wade held her gaze. I grew up on a farm not unlike this one. Watched my parents lose it to drought and debt when I was 16. That's why I do what I do now. The vulnerability in his admission caught her off guard. How did you become successful then? Determination. Luck. He shrugged. And a promise to never forget where I came from. With that, he tipped his hat and strode to his horse. I'll be back soon, Miss Evans. Mabel watched him ride away, a strange mix of hope and apprehension stirring in her chest. When she returned inside, her father was staring thoughtfully into his coffee cup. What do you think, Pa? She asked. Thomas sighed heavily. I think he's either the answer to our prayers or the smoothest talking swindler to ever set foot in Wyoming. He gave her a knowing look. And I think my daughter might be a little sweet on him already. Mabel felt heat rise to her cheeks. I hardly know him. Precisely my concern, her father said, but there was a glint of amusement in his tired eyes. Just remember, pretty words and fine boots don't make a man trustworthy. His boots weren't so fine after I doused them with milk, Mabel replied with a small smile. Her father chuckled. That's my girl. Always making an impression. True to his word, Wade returned 3 days later with plans for their visit to Sweetwater. He'd arranged for a comfortable wagon and assured Thomas that the journey would be easy on his health. What surprised Mabel most was the genuine care Wade showed her father, bringing a special cushioned seat and a tonic from the doctor in town that was said to ease breathing. The 2-day trip revealed a side of Wade Irwin that intrigued Mabel further. He was knowledgeable about farming, respectful of her father's experience, and possessed a dry wit that even made Thomas crack a smile occasionally. Around the campfire on the first night, he spoke of his childhood in Missouri, his years working cattle drives, and how he'd saved enough to start investing in small farms. My pa always said a man's only as good as his word, Wade told them as the firelight danced across his features. I've tried to live by that. My husband said the same, Mabel remarked, remembering her father's similar expressions over the years. Wade's eyes found hers across the flames. Your father raised you well, it seems. That I did, Thomas interjected with unexpected pride, though her mother deserves most of the credit. Finest woman I ever knew. I wish I could have met her, Wade said sincerely. Mabel noticed how her father studied Wade, as if reassessing him. Perhaps, like her, he was beginning to see beyond the successful businessman to the thoughtful man beneath. Sweetwater changed everything. The dairy cooperative Wade had established was thriving. 5 family farms working together, each maintaining their identity while sharing the benefits of combined resources. The farmers spoke highly of Wade's fair business practices and genuine concern for their welfare. He saved us, Mrs. Peterson, one of the dairy farmers, told Mabel privately. Bank was ready to foreclose when Mr. Irwin came along. Now we're making better money than ever, and my boys have a future here. By the time they returned to Prosperity, Thomas Evans had softened considerably toward Wade. I'll think on your offer, he told him as they parted ways in town. Seems you might not be the vulture I took you for. Wade laughed. High praise indeed, Mr. Evans. As her father headed to the apothecary, Wade turned to Mabel. Would you allow me to call on you properly, Miss Evans? Perhaps Sunday after church. Mabel felt a flutter in her chest that had become familiar in his presence. I'd like that very much. The following weeks brought a gradual but undeniable change to Mabel's life. Wade called regularly, sometimes discussing business with her father, but increasingly finding reasons to spend time with her alone. They rode across the rolling hills surrounding Prosperity, picnicked by the creek that bordered the Evans property, and once, memorably, attended a dance in town where Wade's skilled waltzing left Mabel breathless. Talk spread quickly in the small community. The handsome investor and the dairy farmer's daughter made an intriguing pair. Some whispered that Wade was simply securing his business interests, but those who observed them closely saw the genuine affection growing between them. One evening in late July, As they sat on the Evans porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Wade broached a difficult subject. "Your father signed the partnership agreement today," he said, his voice careful. Mabel nodded, unsurprised. "He's been talking about it all week. I've never seen him so excited about the future." "I'm glad." Wade hesitated. "But I want to be clear about something, Mabel. My feelings for you have nothing to do with business." She turned to look at him, studying the earnestness in his expression. "I've wondered about that," she admitted. "It would be convenient, wouldn't it? To charm the daughter while securing the father's cooperation." Wade flinched slightly. "Do you truly believe that's what I've been doing?" Mabel considered the question seriously. The man beside her had shown nothing but integrity in their dealings. He'd been patient with her father's suspicions, respectful of their circumstances, and unfailingly kind to everyone he encountered. Even Mrs. Wilson, notorious for her difficult nature, had nothing but praise for Wade Irwin. "No," she said finally. "I don't believe that's who you are." Relief visibly washed over him. He reached for her hand, his touch sending that now familiar warmth through her. "Good, because I need you to know that what I feel for you is entirely separate from any business arrangement. In fact, if your father had declined my offer, I would still be sitting here right now, hoping for a chance to win your heart." "Is that what you're trying to do?" she asked softly. "Win my heart?" Wade's lips curved into the smile that never failed to make her pulse quicken. "Ever since you baptized my boots with milk, Mabel Evans, I knew then that you were someone special." "Because I ruined your footwear?" she teased. "Because you faced your embarrassment with grace. Because you cared more about making things right than protecting your pride." He squeezed her hand gently. "And because when you smiled at me, it felt like seeing the sun after a month of rain." Mabel fought the urge to look away from the intensity of his gaze. No man had ever spoken to her like this, with such unguarded emotion. "You have a way with words, Mr. Irwin." "Only when they're true," he replied. "I'm falling in love with you, Mabel. I think I have been since that first day." The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Mabel's heart raced as she realized she'd been feeling the same way, though she'd been afraid to acknowledge it. "I believe," she said carefully, "that I might be falling in love with you too." Wade's smile could have lit the darkening sky. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. Their lips met in a gentle kiss that seemed to seal something precious between them. The creaking of the screen door broke them apart. Thomas Evans stood there, looking amused despite his attempt at sternness. "It's getting dark," he observed dryly. "Perhaps Mr. Irwin should be heading back to town." Wade stood respectfully. "Of course, sir. Thank you for your hospitality." He turned to Mabel. "Until Sunday?" She nodded, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. "Until Sunday." As summer gave way to autumn, the partnership between the Evans Dairy and Wade's cooperative began to bear fruit. New equipment arrived, making the daily chores easier on Thomas's failing health. A contract with merchants in Cheyenne meant their products reached a wider market, bringing in more money than the farm had seen in years. But more significant was the deepening relationship between Mabel and Wade. He became a fixture at Sunday dinners, helped with farm repairs, and slowly earned Thomas's complete trust. For Mabel, each day brought new reasons to love him: his patience with local children who followed him around town, his respectful treatment of the Chinese laundry workers others often shunned, his genuine interest in her thoughts and dreams. In October, tragedy struck. Thomas Evans's cough worsened dramatically, and the doctor diagnosed pneumonia. For a week, Mabel barely left her father's bedside, and Wade managed the farm operations without complaint, hiring extra help to ensure nothing was neglected. On a crisp autumn morning, Thomas called them both to his room. His breathing was labored, his once robust frame diminished by illness. "Wade," he said weakly, "I need to speak with you. Man to man." Mabel started to leave, but her father grasped her wrist with surprising strength. "No, daughter. You should hear this too." Wade moved closer to the bed, his face solemn. "I'm listening, sir." Thomas's eyes, though clouded with pain, remained sharp. "You love my daughter?" "With all my heart," Wade answered without hesitation. "And you'll care for her? Protect her? Treat her as your equal?" "I swear it," Wade said, his voice thick with emotion. "Her happiness will be my life's work." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing. I won't be here to walk her down the aisle, but I can go easier knowing she'll have a good man by her side. Tears spilled down Mabel's cheeks. Pa, don't talk like that. You're going to get better. Her father's smile was gentle but knowing. We both know that's not true, my girl. But it's all right. I've lived a good life, and I'll be seeing your mother soon. He looked between them. Promise me you won't wait too long. Life's too short for needless delay. Wade reached for Mabel's hand, entwining their fingers. We promise, sir. Thomas Evans passed peacefully in his sleep 3 days later. The entire town of Prosperity turned out for the funeral, testament to the respect he'd earned over his years there. Wade stood steadfastly by Mabel's side, a quiet pillar of strength as she faced the painful reality of being alone in the world. Except she wasn't alone, she realized. The man beside her had become her partner in every sense that mattered. 2 months after the funeral, on Christmas Eve, Wade took Mabel for a sleigh ride across the snow-covered fields of what was now her farm. They stopped at the old oak tree where her parents had carved their initials decades ago. Your father asked me something that last week, Wade said as they stood beneath the bare branches. He wanted to know if I was planning to take you away from here, back to my other properties. Mabel looked up at him. What did you tell him? I told him that my home would be wherever you were happiest. Wade took her gloved hands in his. This land is part of who you are, Mabel. I would never ask you to leave it unless you wanted to. Tears pricked her eyes, but they were tears of gratitude rather than grief. You would stay here? Make this your home. I already have, he said simply. Then, to her surprise, he knelt in the snow before her. Mabel Evans, I loved you from the moment you spilled milk across my boots and looked at me with those beautiful, mortified eyes. He produced a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? The ring inside was a delicate gold band set with a modest diamond that caught the winter sunlight. It was perfect, not ostentatious, but elegant and sincere, like the man offering it. Yes, she whispered, her heart so full she could barely speak. Yes, Wade Irwin, I will marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, his arms encircling her waist. When they finally parted, both breathless and smiling, Wade pressed his forehead to hers. You know, he said with that familiar twinkle in his eye, I should thank you for that milk. Best thing that ever happened to my boots. Mabel laughed, the sound bright in the crisp winter air. I'll spill milk on you anytime you like, Mr. Irwin. I'll hold you to that, future Mrs. Irwin, he replied, kissing her again as snowflakes began to drift lazily around them. They married on New Year's Day, 1876, in the small white church in Prosperity. The ceremony was simple but joyful, attended by the townsfolk who had watched their love story unfold. Mrs. Wilson cried openly, claiming she'd known all along they were destined for each other. The Peterson family traveled all the way from Sweetwater to witness the union of the man who had saved their livelihood and the woman who had captured his heart. As winter melted into spring, the Evans dairy, now the Evans Irwin dairy, flourished under their combined care. Wade's business acumen and Mabel's intimate knowledge of the land created a partnership that extended far beyond romance. Together, they expanded the cooperative to include 3 more family farms in the territory, creating a network of support that helped all involved thrive. In the summer of 1877, exactly 2 years after their first fateful meeting, Mabel gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth Thomas Irwin, honoring both their mothers and Mabel's father. Wade proved to be as devoted a father as he was a husband, often carrying the baby in a sling across his chest as he worked around the farm. One evening, as they sat on the same porch where they had first confessed their feelings, Mabel nursing their daughter while Wade read aloud from a book of poetry, she was struck by how completely her life had changed. What are you thinking? Wade asked, noticing her contemplative expression. I was thinking about milk, she admitted with a smile, and how sometimes the most embarrassing moments can lead to the greatest joys. Wade laughed, the same rich sound that had captured her heart that scorching summer day. I keep those boots, you know. Haven't worn them since, but I keep them as a reminder. A reminder of what? That love can come from the most unexpected places. He set his book aside and moved to sit beside her on the swing, gently tracing their daughter's cheek with his finger. And that sometimes a woman spilling milk across your boots is exactly what you need to find your way home. Mabel leaned against his shoulder, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them. "I love you, Wade Irwin." "And I love you, Mabel Irwin," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Every day more than the last." As twilight descended over their land, painting the horizon in shades of purple and gold, they sat in contented silence, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed: strength in vulnerability, joy in hardship, and love in the most unexpected of beginnings.